Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Fast Track podcast. I'm your host, Greg Helbeck. And on today's topic, we're going to actually do a real estate weekly lesson. So I'm going to talk to you today about septic tanks and how do you deal with septic tanks when you're investing in real estate, wholesaling, flipping. And if you're a real estate agent, this will be helpful. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Greg Helbeck. I've done well over 200 houses, been a full-time real estate investor now for over 8 years. And I've got a lot of experience. So all the knowledge you get from this podcast is coming from me who has real world experience and not from some regurgitated theory out of a book. So if you do get value from this podcast, if you can do me a favor and subscribe to the podcast and share it with a couple friends, or if you're watching this on YouTube, if you can subscribe to my channel and like the video and leave a comment, it would really mean a lot to me. So let's get into septic tanks. So first things first, anytime you're buying a house, there's really two things that are going to go on with the waste system. It's either going to be on public sewer or it's going to be on septic. And if it's on public sewer, it's preferably much better because that just means all the waste in the property from the bathrooms literally just goes into a pipe, and that pipe gets tied into the municipal system, and that municipal system goes into the sewer plant in whatever town it's in or city it's in, and that's that. So the only real problem with a sewer system is if the sewer pipe is cracked. So sometimes people will do sewer scopes, and they'll basically test the pipe out with a camera to see if it's broken or not. But anyway, that's not the topic of today's video. Today's video is actually about septic systems. So septic system is really popular on houses that are in areas that are a little bit more rural, right? When you have properties that are spread out, maybe they're in the country, they're in the desert. If you're in Nevada, they might be up in the hillside. If you're, I don't know, in upstate New York. But anytime there's a property that's pretty isolated from the rest of the town or the city, most likely it's going to be on a septic system. Also, there are some towns, at least in the Northeast, that just don't have sewer systems, so everything is on a septic. But all the septic tank really is just a way for the waste to be treated privately versus publicly. Publicly, it goes to the sewer plant. Privately, it goes into the septic system. So basically what happens is when someone uses the restroom, they would flush the toilet, and then all that, the feces or the urine will just go through the toilet into the sewer, into the pipe connected to the house. And instead of it going into that sewer system, like I was telling you about with the town or the city, it goes into something called a septic tank. And the septic tank is literally just a tank that holds all the stuff, holds all the dirty water, basically. And then usually there's two ways a septic tank will release. It either releases into a cesspool, which is like a hole in the ground that disintegrates into the earth, or it goes out through the leach field, which is basically a field system that's set up where the waste slowly gets released into the ground through the proper process so the soil doesn't get contaminated. So basically, the septic tank is critically important for a house to be functioning, right? So when you're buying a house, let's talk about buying a house with a septic tank. The first thing you got to do is you got to know if it's on a septic tank. If it's not on a septic tank and it's on a sewer, you have a fairly good chance of there not being an issue, except for something I mentioned earlier, which is the cracked sewer pipe. If it's on a septic tank, so the first thing you want to do is you want to actually get a septic inspection, preferably before you close. Sometimes the seller will agree to this. Sometimes the seller won't agree to this if it's like an as-is sale, but you want to try to get a septic inspection before you close, right? And if you know the septic is screwed up and you get an inspection done before you close, you probably can't renegotiate with the seller because the seller is going to already disclose that to you. But at least you would know that the septic is screwed up and you're going to have to fix it after you buy the house, right? Let's say you get a septic inspection done and the seller tells you the septic is in good shape and you get it done before you close. In that case, you can go back to the seller and say, hey, you told me the septic was working. I just got a septic inspection done and it seems like the septic actually has problems. And it's going to cost X amount of dollars to fix those problems. And I'd like that in the form of a credit or a price reduction. So you have some leverage there. Now, let's say you buy this house, there's a septic problem and you got to get it fixed. So generally there's two things that happen. It's either the septic tank is shot or the entire system is shot, right? So if the septic tank is shot, but the leach field is good, all you would do is repair the tank, which would be cheaper. But if the tank is shot and it's just totally warped, you have to replace the tank. And that generally is going to cost you anywhere from $8,000 to $15,000. Now, if the whole entire septic system is shot and you need to replace the tank and the leach fields, that's probably going to cost you $20,000, maybe $25,000. That's a whole mess, right? So you got to do your homework. The big takeaway with septics is you got to do your homework on what's going on, and preferably before you close. When I say get into the, actually put the money down and close on the property. Do your homework beforehand, get a septic inspection done. That's going to cost you $400 or $500 usually. Septic tank inspection company should tell you everything that's wrong with the house. They put a camera in there. They see if it's good or bad. But in the situation where you get a septic inspection done and there's no issues with the septic, then you have that septic inspection you can use when you go resell the property and say, hey, if you want to get a septic inspection done, you can pay for it. Or you can use my inspection that I did 2 weeks ago that shows the septic property is good, which obviously is going to save you some money and hopefully keep that buyer on board to buy that house. So the big takeaway here is do your due diligence. If you know the property is on a septic system, get a septic tank inspection done before you close. If you're not allowed to do that, if you don't know anything about the septic, let's say the house has been vacant for a couple of years, assume the worst and hope for the best. So when you're running your numbers to do your rehab budget, if you don't know anything about the septic and you can't get an inspection done, assume the septic needs to be replaced. So I would put a $25,000 line item there to replace the septic. And then if you actually get the septic inspection, or the septic inspected afterwards, and you find out the septic is good, now you just save yourself $20,000 you can take off of your budget, which will hopefully go back into your pocket in the form of a profit because you don't have to replace the septic. So hopefully this video was helpful. I know this was in the weeds, really tactical training. Once again, the takeaway here is you got to make sure before you buy a property, get a septic inspection done if you can. I've gotten burned. I've had crazy septic problems happen to me on houses, and we've always been able to find a way around it and replace it or fix it. But know in advance what's going on, because a lot of new investors, they don't do this and they end up not thinking it needs a septic, and then it needs a septic at 20 grand. And then all of a sudden their profit got cut in half or went away in total, or they lost money. So do your due diligence. Hopefully you got value from this. If you did get value from this, if you can please leave me a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to, and subscribe to the podcast. And then also if you're on YouTube, subscribe to my channel, like the video, leave a comment. It would mean a lot to me. And then lastly, if you're in New York, the Hudson Valley, Delaware, Reno, or San Diego, and you have a house you want to wholesale me, or you want to wholesale together on a JV basis, send me an email, greg@velocityhousebuyers.com. I'm looking to do more deals with my followers. So once again, hope you got value, and I'll see you on the next Real Estate Investing Weekly Lesson.